I was born in Soviet Union, and when I was a child, we moved to Israel. Then there was a war, and I think this was the reason to go to a more secure country. Germany has taken us. This is in our history, in our memories. I am, and we Jews in general are, more sensitive to geopolitical events because we know how politics in the past changed our lives within a minute. I think everybody in US and worldwide understands something is wrong. The very superficial symptoms right now, as we see them, is that we have a very aggressive, antagonistic, partisan, as it's called in American English, political discourse, which is based on emotions, on sometimes insults and personal attacks. Almost nobody can actually tell what is it about. They are discussing how, for example, the current President Trump is looking, how he's talking, what is he tweeting. Conversations are being taken to emotional discussions instead of actually discussing just straight facts and then decide yes or no. Do we want to have the house black or white or green or yellow? And then just decide based on facts and some scientifics. It does not contribute to the real problems. Right now, what the symptoms are that there is a fight about things which are actually shouldn't matter in a serious political discussion. And so it is, unfortunately, very rarely, if at all, if I can see in big media houses who should provide the information to the normal people who are busy with their own lives. They should provide at least the facts, what is it about? But they don't. They just contribute to this heated environment. And at the end of the day, we shouldn't have to forget that the electorate means people who are electing someone, they have to decide which candidate they want to support, which parties they want to support. If they are not well informed, then they unintentionally do wrong decisions. Millions of people today believe that the earth is flat. Now, they do it with full heart, and I'm sure they have the arguments. But if it happens to be that the earth is not flat, and they do some decisions based on the assumption, on a wrong assumption, then it can lead to very grave consequences. So that's similar here. In order to have a logical decision-making process which is based on facts, if the people don't have the facts, they create a lot of noise but has nothing to do with reality. Obviously, the financial structure in any country is very important. And so somebody says, oh, okay, we've heard about that dollar, yes, and printing, it's all old news and we know that. But I just want to remind everybody that if whoever listens to me goes every day to work, and it takes a lot of time and effort, we know that, our lives are 30–40% dictated by the time we spend on work. Would you do the same if you wouldn't be paid for? Very simple question. So obviously, if you spend 30 or 40% of your life, you want to be paid, means the financial benefit of it, so you can afford other things you need to do. If we understand what is the financial system in any particular economy, this is almost always the key to understand all other questions. And there's a saying, just follow the money, and this makes absolutely sense. If we go a little bit in history back, we have to see that the American dollar today is the main reserve currency. Only America can create this currency. We have to understand that. America took over the global reserve currency from the former empire, United Kingdom. Before World War II, America owned to Europe, if I'm not wrong, $4 billion. And after World War II, Europe owned America $8 billion. So within those 4 years, if you want, 4 or 5 years, where war went very actively in Europe and Asia, it changed completely. And so America became then the world leader in finances. And we have to understand that the pound, British pound, was based on gold. So there was a gold standard. The British Empire guaranteed that if it creates money, means paper, printing paper, then each pound will buy a certain amount of gold, so-called gold standard. And during World War II, America supplied Europe, the Western allies, and also Soviet Union to some degree, so to a very small degree, but still they also supplied with weapons and materials, transportation, and the allies paid back for this in gold. So it was not a gift, it was a purchase during wartime. And since America was safe through the oceans, the war did not hit America's soil, thanks God, and so America became to superpower through the events which went on in World War II. So the industries were completely destroyed, the gold went over the ocean, and here go a new empire occurred. In a nutshell, we can say this is obvious, everybody knows this is not a secret. American strength came through the World War events. In a meeting in Bretton Woods, so-called Bretton Woods Agreement, I think it was in '46, the Americans told to the world, guys, we have now the gold, so we will guarantee our dollar with gold reserves we have accumulated. The Brits were against because they lost factually the empire, but the Americans even didn't ask them. In fact, they faked their signature on Bretton Woods agreements, and they couldn't do anything about this because they lost the industries, they lost the financial strength, and Germany, as one of the major factor in Europe, also was completely destroyed, and this was the beginning of the American financial strength. And so what the Americans did, they said, okay, we will guarantee with gold our currency, and whoever wants to join this system, he needs to keep his currency plus minus 3% to the dollar, but still we're obligated to back up the dollar with gold. The Americans began to print, and all other countries who joined the system, so the Western countries, governments had to buy from the markets the overprinted dollars, and to keep their currencies about 3% to the value of the American dollar. And that led to the fact that tons of paper, dollar paper, were accumulated in various Federal Reserve banks worldwide, so the main banking system. So at some point, the French, they sent here ships to New York and demanded the Americans to get gold for this paper. And Americans, bound by this Bretton Woods Agreement, indeed supplied. So they have taken back their paper and have returned gold to France, and then other countries joined. And at the end of the day, in 1971, there was this famous Nixon shock, where from the almost 40,000 tons, just 8,000 tons were left because America had to return the gold back for the paper. And Nixon declared that America one-sidedly goes out from this system, and dollar is not backed by gold anymore.
We all know why we have an unemployment problem.
I would like to ask my audience, when they look back over hours and hours they spent watching the common news, Fox News and CNN, NBC, whatever, it doesn't matter, whether any time they were explained what is actually the strength of this country, why is it so strong, and what happens if something changed. After World War II, America's economy was about 60% of the world economy. Now, if we look today, American economy is about 15 or 13% of the world economy. Obviously, because the other nations also develop and the competition is there. America then made a very smart move again, and they went to the OPEC countries. And we know OPEC is comprised by kings, if you want, sheikhs who control the countries, very dictatorial regimes. In Saudi Arabia, for example, women are not allowed cars by themselves, or now they can adjust it a couple months ago. But in any case, those are not democratically elected leaders. And so America made them an offer. They told them, hey, we're going to save your place wherever you are, whoever you are, and we will provide you military support so you can stay in place. But for this, you will sell your crude oil in US dollar only. If, let's say, Japan, who does not have their own oil reserves, if they need oil, obviously they need, so they go, for example, to Saudi Arabia and they say, hey, we would like to buy your oil. And Saudi Arabia says, yes, sure, this is what our strength is for our economy, but you have to pay with US dollar. Now, US dollar, Japan cannot print themselves. In order to get the US dollar, they go to America and tell them, give us please US dollar so we can buy oil. But the Americans obviously say, yeah, we will give you US dollar, but what do we get in return? And then the Japanese look at the America's markets and they say, maybe you can use some cars we can build for you. So yeah, sure, we'll take your cars. And other nations come with their products, with steel, with coffee, with whatever. What does it mean? That means that Japanese, in order to get the absolutely needed crude oil, without crude oil, we understand modern societies cannot function today, they now must sell us here in US products which they can sell. Means they need to be better, less expensive, more competitive. And this was, I think, a very detrimental change long term for the American economy. Because then, instead of actually manufacturing goods and being better than the rest of the world, which America was very good in, best cars and so forth, they more and more relied on the ability to print money and to buy products they needed from the world instead of producing its own. This made the dollar to a main reserve currency even stronger in place. This situation has two sides of a medal. So it has a positive side, that it is obviously easier to print money and then to buy whatever you want than to do it your own. It is much easier to leave the hard work to somebody else. It's a natural process. Every economy which is providing the world reserve currency to the world, obviously, this is built into the system, was described already in the 60s by a French professor. The strength of the economy is being lost by this process of distributing its currency worldwide, because we are losing production and we are becoming more brokers, if you want. This system, financial system, over 50 years, transformed very strongly the American economy. America went more and more to services, financial services, and relying on supply of goods we need for every day to be provided from outside of the world. If today the dollar would cease to be main reserve currency, would collapse probably more than 50%.
Holy fucking shit.
The politicians obviously know about that. And they must do everything possible to maintain this business model. They just cannot allow themselves to say, okay, we understand it's bad for the country, let's just change the model. So since this is the situation, the reason why America is now getting nervous about this is because it's lost its ability to secure this financial system in place. As we understand now, it is crucial for the American dollar to have something what only dollar can be used for a very important commodity, and this is the crude oil. And when we think about the war in Iraq, 2003, we were told, the whole world and the Americans were told, that we are going after Iraq, Saddam Hussein, because he was producing weapons of mass destruction. And this was the motivation. But then we didn't find any. And the whole history kind of landed in sand. So it disappeared. Who is responsible? Why did America invaded Iraq? And we don't have to talk about what it means invading a country for the country itself. The reason for the Iraq war to have happened is indeed the fact that Saddam Hussein in 2001 or 2 began to sell its crude oil in euros, so in the freshly emitted European currency. And so if we understand how important the financial system for America is to keep the dollar to be a reserve currency, we understand what it meant then when Saddam Hussein began to sell its crude oil, to which it has the right to do what it wants. The crude oil belongs to the Iraqi nation. He began to sell it in euros. And the very first administrative action the Americans did after invading Iraq, they have changed the trade from euros to US dollar. Because we understand now how important the maintenance of dollar to be a world reserve currency for the US economy. 50% shrinkage if it does not happen. Obviously, the leadership, the government, independently which party or which person is here, in the moment where he gets to the White House, he has to do everything possible to maintain it. And fact is that this system is being held in place no matter what. And now, due to some unwise steps of the American leadership, they have provoked country to take some countermeasures which in essence have completely obliterated the ability of US to maintain this world reserve currency dollar as it was in the past. And before America was able to rely on its intelligence services, on media might it has, 80% of all news are controlled by American media's corporations.
The television news business is a very small place.
Since the government cannot tell to their own population that, you know, we have started the war in Iraq not because of weapons of mass destruction, not because we want to promote democracy, because after all, Saudi Arabia is not as a big democracy and we are best friends. The only reason why we assembled 300,000 Americans plus 200,000 other nations to invade Iraq is because we wanted to maintain the world currency as the dollar. Normal Americans would never agree to allow its government to kill hundreds of thousands of people, to invade other countries so they can drive a bigger car. Americans can build their own cars very well themselves, but because the government, based on the changes, long-term changes, the US economy has taken, they cannot tell the truth, because they will be immediately wiped off from the political scene. 25 years ago, in America we had approximately 50 independent media houses who had their own journalists, who had their own opinions, and they provided the needed discussion. Today, we had a consolidation of those media houses, that we have just 4 or 5 independent media there, which are indeed not independent, because if you see how they discuss various big topics, there's no discussion. This is to mute those questions. And may I remind you, for example, when Obama was to be elected, I think, a second time, Jill Stein, the Green Party leader, she rightfully asked, why am I not being invited to those discussions? This is a supposedly democracy. We have 10 candidates from one party, Republican, 10 candidates from Democratic Party. Okay, but those are still only two parties. If dictatorship is bad, which has only one party, if you want, how much bigger is a system where just two parties have a discourse? So that shows that the elites here are doing everything possible to allow some topics, yes, which has absolutely nothing to do with real problems, to distract the people instead of discussing real problems. And so this has changed, this financial scheme indeed has led to degradation of the American political system completely. In America, we have such a deep divide. And we have to understand that those parties, Republican and Democratic parties, they have in many, almost actually all key policies, they have no difference at all. We have seen all the actions which require to maintain the dollar currency to stay as a world reserve currency from both parties. The wars never ended independently who was ruling, and nothing changed indeed. Yes, they have little areas here and there, but in a big sense it is actually only one similar approach. And the reason for it is, as I have discussed, the situation, the financial situation does not allow anything else. I may remind right now, where we are in the COVID situation, America's government, from each dollar they spend, only 40 cents are actually from tax income. 60 cents from a dollar are being printed out of nowhere, backed up only by the fact that some voluntarily and some by pressure are selling their stuff for US dollar, like crude oil, for example. Republican or Democratic candidate, at the end of the day, they, as I explained, do the same in major things. Now we have the following situation. Trump is the one who says we have lost a lot of production, we need to make America strong again. So we are not as dependent on other countries, number one. And in his assumption, America will be then strong again because it will be able to do it itself. The other part, they are opposing Trump because they want to maintain this dollar system in place. And I have just explained why it is needed, because otherwise America cannot spend almost 40% of world military expenditures. So I just want to remind that American population is something about 3% of whole world population. And it can spend on military, which is not producing anything. Military is just dead capital. No tank has ever produced anything than just destroying something. So we are spending about 35% of what the whole world is spending on military. The other part, which represented by Biden in the moment, is maintaining, no, we have to keep the system in place. Now, I would like to point out here two things. First of all, in regards to the Trump idea, it is much more difficult to produce the car, a competitive car, than to print money and to let somebody else do it. It won't be possible to gain as much advantage from selling cars to somebody else than just to print money and to have this delivered to here. In 2008, 2009, when the financial crisis was there, China, after 20 years of exporting to the whole world its products, had accumulated $4,000 billion in reserves. And America, when the collapse came and the banks began to collapse, had, as I have read, 20 billion left. So they were bankrupt. And now, under Obama, who just came to power, they had to rescue, obviously, the financial system. They have created, or printed, if you want, so it's electronically created, but they have created $8,000 billion within 2 weeks. This is backed by crude oil, because the crude oil can be purchased in US dollar only, so the Americans can print the problems out at the cost of other nations. My point here is that China needed 20 years, 1.5 billion people worked to export different goods and accumulated 4 trillion, and America has printed within 2 weeks $8 trillion and rescued the economy. So the parties here, one says we want to have production here, the other says we want to have globalization, so the dollar is more and more and stays dominant in the world economy, so we can continue and must continue our economical process. If indeed the industry is coming back, the production, yes, it will be good for US as a nation, but it won't be able to maintain the financial empire, if you want. On the other hand, if the globalization part wins, let's say the Democratic Party this time wins and they will try to continue to go this other pathway, now we have to understand that this is a dead end as well. And the reason for it is because there are very mindful forces now in the face of China and especially also of Russia, who have militarily brought Russia to understand that it has no friends in West. It has provoked Russia to answer to the American borderless, if you want, borderless behavior. NATO, for example, is now at the Russian borders, so it was promised Russia not that NATO will never get close to the Russian borders. The Soviet Union, the Russians have fought thousands of years, and the last big major threats came from West. First World War and Second World War. Today's Russia is very sensitive to what's going on the Western borders, and Russia has reacted to it. The point is, even the biggest ship, if it has a leak, it will sink. The American way of life is long-term not sustainable. Russia has reacted to this challenge and have physically obliterated the ability of the American military to enforce this upon other countries. We can see it all over. We can see it how in Syria, this was the first time Russia stepped in and said, no, enough is enough. And now what happens is geopolitically, we see that Trump administration is opting out from various arms treaties, which in the past they did because they thought that they don't need to listen to Russians anymore, so they opted out from the anti-ballistic missile shield agreement. But then Russia has overcome this ballistic missile shield. All the systems are worthless. Tens of or hundreds of billions of dollars were spent over the last 20 years, and Russia, with its development with hypersonic missiles, has basically made them within 1 hour obsolete. And now the Americans, in order still to push the envelope, they are opting out from, or trying to threaten at least to opt out from the last ones, START 2, I think it's called, or 3. Anyway, so this will allow nuclear weapons to be stationed in cosmos, basically on satellites, which means that over America and then over Russia and other regions wherever needed, satellites will have armed nuclear weapons and hovering 20, 30 kilometers above our cities. Each of the nuclear submarine which the Americans have, the Russians have, can destroy within 30 minutes 200 cities. The weapons today are so much more destructive, can destroy within 30 minutes 200 cities. One has just to understand the level of destruction the modern weaponry has reached. We need to stop our greed. We need to recognize that other nations have also justified interests which may be against our interests, and we have to follow the rules. That's what I explained. If we have chess game, okay, we may have stronger or weaker players, but we still play chess. But what America does is it plays chess, but in the moment where it loses, it changes the rules suddenly, it misinforms its own population. But the risk is that now we are not dealing with Iraq, which was a small country, couldn't get us an answer, but now we are dealing with Russia, and Russia has the ability to completely destroy America. America is the same, but is this the way to solve our disagreements? This is our human nature. This has nothing to do with specifics of American politicians. We cannot assume that they will voluntarily agree, yes, we have to do something. So if it is the case indeed, then the only way it's gonna stop is similar like it happened in Soviet Union, by the way, where the leading elite did not see the mismanagement, the problems the country had, and each country has problems, but they didn't react to them. And this is, by the way, the advantage of a democracy. If the politicians do hear their nation, they make adjustments on time before it comes to a collapse and prevent things to happen. So in Soviet Union, the system was not ideal. As I say, no system was ideal, but the main point is that the leadership in Soviet Union had the chance to change things to make it work, and they didn't. And the same is going to happen here. So what I want to point out, America is close to get to a situation where I would symbolize this way. Imagine there is an elephant, which has a trunk, as we know. Since millions of years, elephants are relying on the trunk so they can do what they need to do to survive. And if America does not make changes needed to adapt to the new situation, which will come, and which they resist to do right now based on this political system here right now, then it will come in a way that, similar to this elephant, they will say, hey, elephant, I'm gonna cut your trunk, and then in 2 weeks it will happen. So we're gonna cut your trunk in 2 weeks, and please adapt within the next 2 weeks so you can survive without the trunk. This is what it is. If the dollar becomes to a much weaker currency, which we are possibly heading towards right now, and the US economy did not adapt in the past and are fighting here this emotional wars which have nothing to do with real problems, spent trillions on military expenditure which do not provide nothing actually for the benefit of this country except to force other countries to use the dollar. So what happens here in the future? And yes, America did a big step forward. If we consider that just 50 years ago, blacks were not allowed to drive in buses with whites. So America did a huge step forward in regards to this. Obviously, it's not ideal, and there's work to be done. But that should be done not by protesting and by storming the supermarkets and defunding the police, which also needs reformation. This needs to be thought through properly and not just destroying. In Russian, there's a saying, destroying is not building. It is very simple to destroy, to burn down something, and then go and rebuild this. And Russia had this over the last century 3 times, if you want, or 2 times. And this was enough. And therefore, obviously, we need to do everything possible to prevent here this country to collapse in a revolutionary wars. We need to be able to find problems and to discuss them and peacefully to solve it. But the political leadership has to understand that the business model this country is running is almost done. We need to immediately to begin to create more political freedoms, more political parties. The parties must be stopped to be dependent on donations from special interests. The main reason why we have so many things wrong, like I'm giving you an example, students leaving the universities with 300,000-400,000 debts. I just said here one of the dentists talking to him, he has 350,000 debt coming out of the university to become a dentist. We have much too expensive legal system, which is not working, by the way, properly. 10 times more people sitting in jail than in any other country. The health system, America wants to be capitalistic. They say, yes, we are not social. I'm giving you a couple examples. Let's say a student goes to a bank and says, I have been just accepted to study to become an engineer or a dentist or whatever. And he asks, give me please $300,000 loan, and I promise you in 5 years, if I'm done, I will begin to work, and I promise you I will pay this back. So any normal commercial bank would ask you, okay, and what is your collateral? How do you guarantee this? How can we just give you several $100,000 to a 19 or 18 years old on a promise that he will study, that he will pass all the examiner, and in 10 years he will begin to pay back? Impossible in any other country. Here it is possible. Why? Because those banks turn around to the government, and the government guarantees them the loans. You look everywhere else. The government guarantees the housing market. Means the commercial banks who give much too easy in terms of financial restrictions, big loans for housings, they can also turn around and basically get bailed out by the government. Health is 3-4 times as expensive as in any other modern society. Still, by the way, millions, tens of millions have no insurance. But the question is, how is it possible that a country which supposedly needs economy which is competitive, how can it be that a country can afford all these expenditures? This is only possible because the government is printing money at the cost of the whole world economy and supports this. So many things need to be adjusted. We have to understand the military option to force someone to sell its products in US dollar is gone. We have to change. And America has to fight for the real interests of the people. And I guarantee you within 5 years we will have here a normal health system where people don't have to become bankrupt if they have a surgical operation to fix a knee or appendix. And the study in universities will be normalized, that we don't have to spend tens of thousands to become an engineer or whatever. There's absolutely no need for this. And America will reinvent itself. People who are in charge, maybe by listening to this, they feel threatened by what I just said. They have to understand that I have just described to a very ill person what he has to do in order to get off the risk to completely die, if you want. If somebody has had a heart attack already and has symptoms that there's a serious underlying problem, and he is continuing to smoke or to do some bad habits, or denies some treatment, maybe some surgery, and thinks he can just overlook the reality and continue to on by not allowing such people like me. There are thousands of others who have the same understanding, who are being muted due to diverse tools, and there are a government, a country has endless ability to mute free thinking people if they are consolidated in one arm. This is the danger of it. And America is very highly consolidated. They have everything, every knowledge about us, the citizens today, with these Facebooks and all the social media. We are transparent for them. And those forces which are thinking that they are untouchable and they can do what they want, they should just look in the history. Look at all those major kings and dictators who thought they can control the situation completely. And at the end, it was tragedy, not only on the nation, but on themselves. We need people who are standing up, disregards to their position, the generals who, for example, are writing books after they are laid off or after they're 8 years old and retired anymore, then they write books. Too late, gentlemen. If you are really concerned about your nation and you think, you understand how deep it is, the problem, then stand up now. And again, I do not say to do revolution and to turn around like it happened in Russia. That's not the question. The question is to stand up and to voice your concern and to force the elites to stop airing insults and emotions, why he had the red dress or why he didn't say this or that, and to stop play these bad games. And if you are there understanding this and you are there to represent and are concerned about this nation, then do your obligations, please, and serve the country and not your personal needs.